Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. It's our job to work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs and the IG community to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the federal bureaucracy. I would note today that what we read at the opening of every committee hearing is particularly questionable today, or appropriate today, when it says government accountable to taxpayers. Our democracy was created by people and for the people. When government power is used to target Americans for exercising their constitutional rights, there is nothing we as representatives should find more important than to take it seriously, get to the bottom of it, and eradicate the behavior. Since 2010, there appears to have been a targeting of people based on their beliefs. These people, particularly those who use Tea Party in their name, were mocked by the liberal media, mocked by late night television, and referred to by this administration regularly with disdain. Even here in the halls of Congress, people would talk about who the Tea Partiers were, who was Tea Party supported, when in fact there is no Tea Party. As the evidence has shown, there are hundreds and hundreds of organizations as independent as any single American who simply wanted to live up to the Constitution, to have their freedom and have it protected by our country. So last year, when we received troubling complaints by groups across the country who were receiving what appeared to be inappropriate and unnecessary questions, in many cases after more than a year, sometimes 2 years of inaction by the IRS, we went to the Inspector General, who is here with us today. In March of last year, upon the request of our staff, and later in a formal letter from Mr. Jordan, the committee subcommittee chairman, and myself, the IG launched a formal investigation. We knew then that something seemed to be wrong. We knew then that there was smoke. We knew then that, in fact, something just didn't seem to be right. What we didn't know what was really wrong, and we could never have suspected an organized and pervasive denying of hundreds of applications, not by a reject stamped and sent back, but by deliberate inaction. So our suspicions were just that. Only in the last few weeks have we begun to realize that this was, at least within the IRS, vast, because every single person who looked at one of these applications could have and should have been a whistleblower, could have and should have realized there was something wrong. During this period of time of more than a year, we had an intervening election. Many people want to talk about this relative to the election. I will not do that here today. This is more important than any one election. We need to look at this relative to our democracy. The power to tax is the power to destroy. The power to grant tax status is in fact an enhancement of the right and liberties of our speech. That is what was at stake here. And it wouldn't matter one bit if a different group was targeted. It is wrong. Congress produces laws, many of them complex. We may hear in the weeks and months to follow that there was the complexity of these applications that caused this. Complexity is created more often than it exists. The IRS finds complexity when it's convenient and simplicity when it's not, when it's convenient. That is what we've begun to find out. During the same period of time, Well, at least two investigations were going on, one by the IG and one internal. Congress was misled. The American people were misled. Just yesterday, the committee interviewed Holly Paz, the Director of Exempt Organizations, Rulings, and Agreements Division of the IRS. Well, a tremendous amount of attention is centered about the Inspector General report or investigation. The committee has learned that from Ms. Paz that she, in fact, participated in an IRS internal investigation that concluded in May of 2012, May 3rd of 2012, and found essentially the same thing that Mr. George found more than a year later. Think about it. For more than a year, the IRS knew that it had inappropriately targeted groups of Americans based on their political beliefs, and without mentioning it, and in fact, without honestly answering questions that were the result of this internal investigation. Many people believe that the IRS is an independent agency. Nothing could be further from the truth. We define it deliberately as less political. It has only two political appointees. It is carefully and scrutinized to have limited visibility to Congress, limited visibility because we're protecting American people's rights. But in fact, the commissioner, former commissioner who's with us today, will tell us he reports to the Deputy of Treasury. In fact, he is a subordinate of a cabinet officer. It is not an agency that gets to do what it wants to do or that cannot be challenged by Treasury. As a result, when we discovered that not only did Ms. Paz know about this, learn about this, and participate in the IRS's internal investigation, but she also played an integral role in the IG's report or investigation. We were shocked to find that Ms. Paz participated in virtually every one of the interrogations or interviews with her own subordinates. In those, of course, one of the questions the IG had to ask was, did anyone tell you to do this? If that question was asked, their own superior was in the room. Although it appears as though this was signed off by the IG, this committee finds it inappropriate for any inspector inspecting wrongdoing within an agency to include individuals in the agency who in fact could be, and we now believe, participated willingly in this activity. It's also unclear why the Inspector General did not inform the committee of his substantive findings when he first became aware of the targeting no later than July of 2012. And here's where I take a liberty of this committee, a liberty of the Congress. Despite numerous requests from the committee for information and updates, including an August 3rd letter, the request for the IG to inform Congress about serious or flagrant problems quickly, the IG failed to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is existing law. That is under the IG Act. That has been a responsibility of IGs across the board since the 70s. And we, in fact, on this committee, both support, defend, and promote the IGs, but we must also insist, particularly after situations like the GSA scandal that this committee dealt with, that we not wait 10 months to find out that there's a there. That, in fact, is perhaps the greatest failing of an otherwise well-regarded inspector. Today, we will be looking at how things went so wrong, how multiple wrongdoings occurred, how no one in position of authority seems to know anything about it. And within the administration, there seemed to be a culture of insulation that puts higher priority on deniability than addressing blatant wrongdoing. The American people don't expect perfection. Men and women, many of them working very hard and trying to do the best within government, make mistakes. A few make wrongdoings and do so deliberately. But the buck has to stop somewhere. So in this investigation, the buck will stop with this committee. This committee will not stop this investigation until we know that the IRS is fixed. In a one-on-one interview with the IG shortly after his report, I asked the Inspector General a simple question that I expected to have a mixed answer on. The question was, is this the only time? Could this happen again? In fact, his answer to me in an unambiguous way is, the internal controls are not there for me to say that it isn't happening somewhere else in the IRS. Meaning, the American people today should not have confidence that this is an isolated incident, but rather, like the days of Enron and WorldCom, you ask the question, has Congress made this organization auditable and accountable the way they make us auditable and accountable? I paid a lot of taxes in my life. Most people on the dais have. We know one thing. You cannot just say you're doing the right thing and expect the IRS to take your word and the check you send in. Documentation, the ability to verify it is essential when dealing with the IRS. We can expect no less when we deal with the IRS. I now recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.